The early church in Townsville was up in Sturt Street, wasn't it? Which is where Parry Nissen is today.
We had a minister, an evangelist, Jim Cherry, come to Townsville, and he ran a program called Dead Men Do Tell Tales. He baptised 84 people, and that meant that the town church was really struggling. They didn't have enough room.
Because after Cherry's mission, there were just so many people packed into the town church that we had to do something.
When grandfather was the president here in this conference, I was born. And so he was here at the president. So when news of my birth arrived, hey, you got another grandson, you know, he was here in Aitkenvale.
Pastor Austin Townend was our president, and I can remember him saying, because we have so many in church, it's time for us to divide and multiply. Pastor John Ludlow was our pastor.
They had drawn a line of Bayswater Road, and that was called the Ludlow line, and anybody that lived on that side of the Ludlow line basically were expected to go to Aitkenvale Church. And we had an old wooden hall similar to the hall that they use for the camp store. We started off in there as our church, and just outside of that building was a little sapling. It's a little thin, skinny sapling of a tree. And today, that big rain tree that's out there on the campground, that now is that sapling, and that's how I saw Aitkenvale Church grow. The tree grew, the church grew.
We were always anxious to go, and there was never a thought of staying home, was there, Rob?
Aitkenvale, for one of their fundraising efforts, was to concrete the floor in the Arthur White Hall. And we poured that floor in one day. And we didn't have ready-mix concrete. It was just mixers and people shoveling and mixing concrete. And they wanted to put that down because they wanted to use it with the youth and to be able to roller skate in it, so they didn't have joins, so many joins in the floor. In those days you could have stalls. They used to run street stalls and cook cakes. And
The times when we were cementing under the houses, the times when we were painting the buildings on the campgrounds and all that sort of thing. We had blacksmiths and boilermaker welders, and everyone worked. There wasn't many that didn't work.
I've always had my membership at Aitkenvale. Aitkenvale's my home church. Boris, I love Aitkenvale Church. That's home.
We had such a unity. The whole church was just one big family, and we worked. We wanted to see this church grow. We were involved. That's the main secret of it.
Everybody sort of helped one another, and if anybody come to the church and they were new and they had a child, my husband would say, give it to my wife, she'll look after it. You know, you just had a whale of a time together, and, you know, it was the young and the old all sort of mixing.
While ever we had the vision to build a church, I mean, we started off with not a penny. The only thing we had was the ground that the church was going to be established on. But while ever we had a focus, there was that commitment, there was that unity, and when the church was built and opened, it was never quite the same.
I love this verse where Haggai says, does anyone remember this house, this temple, in its former splendour? You know, and I do it as much as other people, but you look back at the church, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you think, how does it look to you now? That's what Haggai's asking. In comparison, how does it look to you now? It must seem like nothing at all. So you got this generation looking back and saying, well, you know, longing for the good old days sort of thing. But Haggai is saying, just get on with the job. Be strong and courageous. I am with you, says the Lord. Just as I promised when you came out of Egypt, so do not be afraid. We need to do what Haggai is saying, roll our sleeves up and get into it and get the job done.
The more you give to God, the more He will give to you. Don't stop at what you can do. Don't ever say, I can't do that. I'd never mixed cement in all my life. But here I was helping them learn new talents. God will bless you. Don't limit God. Whatever you do, don't ever limit God.
We have to grab hold of it. In other words, it has to become our church. And unless we grab hold of that and say, okay, we can talk about it, which I feel the church has done for 30 years, then we have to say, okay, we're going to do this. But I think the most important thing is to realise that we can't do this without God. It's God's house.